painstaking restoration of a rare P-63 King Cobra and visit with the granddaughter of one of the original WASP, Women Air Force Service Pilots, sort of in celebration of Women Venture Day. And I am extremely honored right now to welcome our first guest. This is the Secretary of the Air Force, Heather Wilson. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Steve, it's great to be with you.
My goodness, as we were talking just offline, you're the highest-ranking person that we've had on the show in all these years, so welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
And you were just recently confirmed by the Senate for this position just a few months ago. How's it going so far?
Well, so far, today is a lot of fun.
Good.
No, it's great. It's great to be back with airmen. As you and I were talking, I'm actually a third-generation Air Force. My grandfather was in the RAF in World War I and then came to America and was a barnstormer and opened little airports all over New England. And then my dad was a flyer as a teenager and then was enlisted in the Air Force. He was a crew chief on the F-84 fighter jet, and then he was a member of the Experimental Aircraft Association after he got out of the service. And he built experimental airplanes and was a commercial pilot. So I grew up around aviators, so this is a great day.
Excellent. You mentioned the design that your dad built. It was one that I was not familiar with,
well,
so a true home built.
It was a PJ is what I remember him call it. He built it inside our house, like a lot of people around here will understand. My mother was a very tolerant woman, but it was an experimental open cockpit biplane. It had a 260 horsepower engine in it. I remember that, and was wooden fabric. Looked a little like a Great Lakes, I guess, but there's probably, I think his was the 17th or 18th of the design.
And as I said, a true home build. I mean,
it was
plans built.
Plans built. It was.
Kit.
I remember in fact, on my desk, and I've had it on my desk for a long time. And I was a president of a university before, but I have a picture of him. They built the jigs to build the ribs to build the wings, and I have a picture of him working on a rib for that airplane. And to me, the message to me from my dad is be a craftsman at your work. No matter what you do, be a craftsman at your work.
Wow, great inspiration, great legacy as well.
Yeah.
And you are a pilot yourself.
I am. I wasn't an Air Force pilot. I went to the Air Force Academy.
Right.
And served as an officer in the Air Force until 1989. But I am a private pilot, and I have a little Cessna 152.
Oh, that's okay. Cessna 152 is a great airplane.
Well, now I'm the Secretary of the Air Force, and there are 5,500 better airplanes around, but I can't fly any of them. So,
if you could take one home from here, do you have a favorite that you might want to tuck in the 737?
Now I think today I've seen a lot more new favorites, but I'm kind of partial to the Vans RV-7A myself.
Oh, yes. Saw a beautiful 7A owned by our very own Rob Ryder last night. So it's parked here. Maybe you can get him to give you a personal tour.
It's one of the guys who's a kind of a friend of a friend here showed me his RV-7A this morning and got to sit in one and things. And I've seen him out on the ramp at Rapid City, which is where I came from. But they're a nice little airplane.
They certainly are. Now, this you mentioned is a bucket list item for you, coming to Oshkosh.
It is. I think my dad came to Oshkosh once. I grew up in New Hampshire, but I think for anybody who loves general aviation and loves innovation in aviation, Oshkosh is one of those things that you always want to go to. And for the Air Force, innovation, and of course here for us, it's celebrating the legacy of aviation. The reason that I was here last night was for the dinner for the Doolittle Raiders. This is the 75th anniversary of the Doolittle strike on Tokyo. And that electrified the nation and really showed the Japanese Empire that we were going to stand and fight. So I'm going to try to stay. I hope the B-25s can get off tonight. So we're celebrating the history of the Air Force and aviation innovation, but also trying to work with organizations like EAA in inspiring the next generation to serve their country and to pursue aviation.
You had dinner last night with Dick Cole?
I did. It was a pretty amazing evening. He's 101 years old. He's the last living Doolittle Raider. And when I was a cadet at the academy, you walk by this case it's a handcrafted wooden case, and inside are 80 silver goblets with the name of each one of the Raiders on it, and a bottle of 1896 Hennessy cognac. And every year the Raiders would get together and they would toast the others, and they'd turn over the goblets for those who passed away. And the plan was that that when they get down to the last two, they would open the bottle of cognac and toast the others. And it's about the fellowship of aviators and about doing things that nobody thought we could do in the defense of this country. And the bottle is open now, and Dick has the last goblet that's standing upright. And so last night I was able to toast the Raiders and Dick Cole.
Amazing. One of those experiences that only happens here at Oshkosh. So we're glad that you are here, and hopefully this won't be the only time that you can make it all the way back to the Midwest to enjoy the camaraderie that is EAA. You mentioned the Air Force Academy and the Raiders. The legacy of the Air Force Academy is carried through your career. When you were in high school, that was about the time that they started having women accepting female applications for the academy. So as some of the first females to go through, what was that experience like?
Well, I was in the third class with women at the Air Force Academy, and I grew up in a family of aviators and aircraft builders and aircraft, airport operators, and so nobody ever told me I couldn't do that. And in fact, when they opened the Air Force Academy to women, I did go talk to my grandfather. My dad died when I was young, but my grandfather was still alive. So here's a man who had started flying shortly after the Wright brothers and had flown in 2 world wars, and it had the first cinder patch he was operating out of is now Logan International Airport. And so he had grown up with aviation, and I went to talk to him about it. And my grandfather had 2 sons, and he had 5 grandsons and me. And I talked to him, and I remember he got real quiet. And then he said, I flew with some Wasps in World War II, and they were pretty good sticks. So I guess I'd be okay. And so with his blessing and a full-ride scholarship, I became the first person in my family to go to college, and I went to the Air Force Academy.
Amazing. What kind of advice do you have for young people who might be listening today who are thinking, well, I'll never qualify for the academy? What do you say to them?
Don't say no to yourself. Okay. There are a lot of opportunities and doors that open for me in life that I never knew were there. And maybe somebody came along and said, you ought to try this. You ought to think about this. There are tremendous opportunities out there for young people. Work hard, get a great education, take the hardest math and science that you can, and give yourself an opportunity to learn to lead, whether that's in the Future Farmers of America or the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or student government or the band, and then apply. But the academy is not the only way to get into aviation. There's the National Guard, and Wisconsin National Guard has some great units. Our recruiters are here today, and a lot of people don't know that you come into the Air Force enlisted. Most of our enlisted corps also now have bachelor's degrees. Many of them have master's degrees. We are one of the most technical, innovative, fun places to work in America, be an airman. And so our recruiters are here today, too. We're expanding the size of the Air Force. The Air Force is too small now for what the nation expects of it. But you've got a lot of opportunities in aviation if you want to follow the legacy of Hap Arnold and Jimmy Doolittle.
And that you are here, the Air Force is here this week, not only to recruit and to let young people know that there is a pilot shortage, that the Air Force is expanding, but there are so many other things that go around aviation. It's not just being pilots, obviously maintenance, maintainers, ground support, all those things that go into it. So there's a wide variety of careers there, but also celebrating the past, the 70th anniversary of the Air Force and the 75th anniversary of the 8th Air Force.
Yeah, you got 8th Air Force anniversary, the 75th anniversary of the Doolittle Raid, which EAA is really highlighting. We got the 8th, and then we've got the 70th birthday of the Air Force. So it's and you think about it, my grandfather started flying, as I said, shortly after he was in World War I. So airplanes were not very complex things, and he lived to see a man walk on the moon. This entire century has been one of innovation in aviation, and it's up to us to just keep it going. It's a wonderful industry to be part of. It's a wonderful community to be part of, and a lot of the folks who are interested in aviation end up spending time in the Air Force.
Excellent. We're talking with Heather Wilson, who's the new Secretary of the U.S. Air Force. her first visit to Oshkosh, and so we're pleased to have you here. With the new technology, I know one of your key issues is STEM and STEM education.
Yeah. I was the president of a science and technology university before becoming Secretary of the Air Force. I was the president of South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, which is similar to Michigan Tech or Missouri Rolla or Colorado Mines, so all engineers and scientists. If you look at the problems of the 21st century, whether they're aviation or whether they're in medicine or energy, they're all going to require more scientific and technical understanding than the problems of the last century. And so what was good enough for my father or my grandfather or me is not good enough for my kids or my grandkids. So we have to have more of our students, more of our young people competent in science, math, or technology. And so if you're interested in aviation in any way, just keep taking the hardest math and science you can and think about being an engineer.
Excellent. Just a few seconds here before we wrap up. Any final thoughts on the Air Force?
Well, I very much appreciate the partnership with organizations like EAA and others to help inspire people to choose to go into the Air Service. And it's a wonderful partnership. We've got some challenges in the Air Force. We've got to recruit more over the next 5 years. We'll be expanding again, so we've really got to appeal to the next generation of young people who want to serve their country in a way that just makes every day a great day.
Excellent. Well, we thank you for your service to the country, your Air Force service, and you also served as a congressman. Yes, so you have served your country well and continue to do so. Thank you for being with us this morning. If you'd like more information about the recruiting opportunities within the Air Force, airforce.com, or just talk to any of the airmen who are here on Boeing Plaza, and they'll tell you how to get signed up and find out more about becoming an airman. You're listening to EAA Radio.
Hi, I'm Sean D. Tucker, chairman of EAA's Young Eagles program. It's AirVenture 2000. We'll see you in the sky.
EAA Radio would like to thank Comrex for their support. Since 1961, Comrex has helped bring audio into studios from virtually anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. Comrex is distinguished from its competitors in that it has no outside ownership demands. Comrex has the luxury of answering only to themselves and their customers. More information can be found at Comrex.com. Thank you to Comrex for their continued support of EAA Radio.
Hey there, Oshkosh goers. Are you ready for a challenge? No. Introducing the 2017 EAA Radio Selfie Hunt. You'll be challenged to find different sites around Whitman Field and take a selfie. To enter the competition and for the scavenger hunt list, find and like us on Facebook at EAA Radio. Happy hunting.
Good morning, Oshkosh. I'm Spencer Schott, bringing you this EAA Radio News Update. Today, AirVenture is celebrating women in aviation for the 10th year in a row. EAA officials say this is a chance for women to build camaraderie, open doors to mentorship, and encourage women of all ages to participate. The goal of Women Venture is to springboard and to motivate other women to get involved either for fun or as a career in aviation. Events are scheduled throughout the day, including the annual Women Venture group photo on Boeing Plaza at 11 o'clock. All this week, hundreds of home builds have flown out to Oshkosh for AirVenture. While these planes are fun for everyone to look at, they have caught the eye of NASA. Home builder and engineer Barnaby Weinfran tells us about the never-ending variation of home builds.
You know, and it continues. I mean, as you walk around the grounds, you see people playing with, now with electrics of various sorts. All kinds of engines, a lot of interesting avionics stuff coming along now.
While NASA is looking into home builds here at EAA, the space agency is also showing off their own projects at the NASA tent. Research engineer Michael Vincent is working on integrating unmanned aircraft into commercial airspace. But his booth is only one example of the projects NASA has on display.
NASA booth as a whole is really trying to showcase all of the really cool work that we're doing that really touches everybody's lives, not just in aviation, but everybody as a whole, as an American citizen.
The NASA booth also features a paper airplane competition, a drone flight simulator, and education about next month's total solar eclipse. Reporting for EAA Radio News, I'm Spencer Schott.
Climbing back to 20 feet AGL, you'd be surprised how great the view is. From the announcer's stand at AirVenture, here's more from the stand.
And good morning. Welcome back from the Ron Scott Communications Center. I'm Steve Buss. Joining me now is Philip Beagle, who is with the Commemorative Air Force with the Dixie Wing of the CAF. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And you are here all the way from the Atlanta area to show off a brand new restoration of a P-63 King Cobra.
Absolutely. What a place to show it off.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the P-63 itself before we get into the specific model.
So the P-63 is the predecessor to the A-10. If you think about the A-10, has a massive gun up front, protects the troops, and that's what it really was designed around. The P-63 was designed the same way. Has a huge cannon up front, 250 cals, and then also 250 cals underneath the wing. And believe it or not, the engine actually sits behind the pilot, and the pilot has a drive shaft that spins between his legs.
I can imagine that some pilots were a little uncomfortable with that.
Just don't tell them; they'll be fine.
Then the P-63 and its predecessor, the P-39, really didn't see a lot of action within the United States, within the U.S. Air Force or the Army Air Corps at the time. Most of them were lend-leased overseas, most in Russia.
Correct.
Which, depending on what history book you read, they had a very impressive record of, as you say, similar to the A-10, tank busting and ground support. Do you have any, figures that are a little more concrete than what I've sort of read on the internet?
Well, I mean, there's over 4,000 airplanes that were made P-63s, and they went to Russia. Russians loved the airplane because of that big cannon up front. It was able to, go out there, fight the missions, take out the tanks, and it really helped protect Russia during that period of time.
And the history on this particular P-63, where did it come out of?
So our P-63 was actually one of the original CF airplanes. It was bought back in the 60s in the CF, but unfortunately, due to corrosion issues, it went down in the 70s and 80s. When I say it went down like they parked it on the side and because of the corrosion. And it hasn't flown in, 30 or 40 years. So that airplane has been in restoration, and it's gone from one unit to the next unit. And, the Dixie Wing the unit said, fine, we'll take it, bring it on. And we got the airplane. It had unfortunately been in a flood and floated around when the Mississippi flooded over at a different unit. And we took it on, and we rebuilt every single piece of magnesium in the airplane with original specs back to aluminum, of course, for safety. Had to rebuild the rudder bar assembly. I mean, the entire airplane, we went through every single facet, every single bolt, every single piece, every single little detail. We went back and made sure it was exactly right spec-wise.
And, of course, this is all done with volunteers.
Well, of course, there's no other way.
That's right. How long was the restoration process?
Let's just say about 30 years.
Now, the Dixie Wing didn't have it for 30 years.
No, like I said,
you've accelerated that restoration process.
Absolutely, and we are the Dixie Wing are very, very, very fortunate with our volunteer base. We have an entire machine shop. We have 8 mills, 3 lathes, heat treat ovens, all the testing equipment necessary to be able to do just that project. So we're very blessed at the Dixie Wing with the type of volunteers we have, and in general the CAF, the passion we have, the drive we have to restore something like that and put it on display at EAA.
As we said, a lot of the P-63s and P-39s went lend-lease to Russia, but there were a few that stayed back here in the United States and had a very, very interesting mission during the war, Operation Pinball.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure out in the crowd, y'all have played laser tag or paintball or something like that, where you go around and you have lasers that intercept the beams going across. During the war, they didn't have that, and they needed their gunners to be able to get practice. So what they did was they took a P-63 and painted it orange, the entire airplane orange, and then added some armament to it, and then had special bullets the bomber pilots would use and shoot the airplane. And so when the bullets would actually hit the airplane would light up and show them, hey, look, you're on target. So that's how they trained gunners during World War II. They put those P-63s out there. So imagine that's your job. Okay, what are you going to do today? Well, I'm going to fly a bomber. I'm going to fly this. What are you going to do? I'm going to be a target.
And literally a target,
Literally.
not just towing a target, which there were a lot of T6s and the Culvers that were used as target tows.
Right.
They were actually shooting at you.
Yeah, absolutely. You were part of the deal.
Any idea how many of them were actually shot down?
I don't know.
Okay. I seem to remember a few, but not as many as you might think.
Yeah, because part of the issue is with obviously with a liquid cooled engine, you have the radiator. So any bullet through the radiator system, anything like that, obviously takes out the airplane.
Amazing. Now, the P-63 that the Dixie Wing is restored was not used in pinball.
Correct.
It carried a different mission.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about that.
So basically what our airplane did was, it was with NACA, the predecessor to NASA, and it helped test the laminar flow design of the wings and all sorts of different characteristics on the airplane. And if you go look at it over there in Warbird Alley, you will actually see it in its original markings. The test, the NACA symbol, everything's exactly right down to where it should be. The paint colors, everything was researched. And so that airplane is actually, historically correct from when it was brought out of the factory with the paint colors and then brought into NACA with all the stenciling and everything on it. It's exactly right.
And you'll be flying it this weekend, Sunday, correct?
Absolutely.
With NASA T-38?
We were really fortunate. One of our members put together a formation flight with 3 Cobras, 4 Cobras that are going to be up here, and a T-38 as well. I mean, it's going to be, what a unique experience to come up here to EAA and be able to witness 3 or 4 Cobras flying at once.
Right. And it draws the legacy between NACA and NASA. So, again, the past and present, as we were talking about earlier. Tell us a little more about the Dixie Wing itself and what you folks are doing down there in Peachtree City.
So the Dixie Wing was founded by 12 members back in the 80s. And we started with the PT-26, and currently we have the PT-26, LT-6, which we restored from the ground up, SBD, which was restored, the P-63, the P-51, and the Corsair.
All of those aircraft are currently flying?
Absolutely.
All right. And you have just worked with the Minnesota Wing not too long ago to do a little mini tour with their B-25.
So the great thing about what we do is, like with the Minnesota Wing, they're trying to get their B-25 perfectly authentic as well. So we're helping manufacture parts for those guys. All the same entity, all with the same CAF. And it's really good to be able to take one unit, be able to help out other units. And that's one of the main things that's great about the CAF is all of our members all across the United States and the world, that matter, we all work together. And it's a lot of fun to be able to participate in an organization like that.
And Miss Mitchell, the B-25 that we're talking about from the Minnesota Wing, is here and participating in the Doolittle Raid 75th anniversary. It is one of the most authentic B-25s. There are a number of B-25s that are flying, and they all look great. But this one, you've really gone back and put the turrets back in and
it's amazing.
All the equipment that needs to be in the airplane. So as far as being, and a lot of these airplanes sell living history flights, flight experiences to help offset costs. This one is not that comfortable for necessarily taking a ride in, but it is an authentic experience.
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, when you go view an airplane, when you go up there and you take that flight, look at it. Spend some time going through the airplane. Go visit the people, talk to the people who rebuilt it, talk to the people who are flying it, talk to the crew members. And it really gives you an idea and this sense of dedication and just proudness that they have for that asset.
And the Dixie Wing also participates in a number of air shows. You mentioned the P-51 Mustang, Red Nose, which, if you're familiar with the CAF history, that is the very first airplane.
The number one
airplane. It is still flying. It was here earlier in the week. I saw it taxi out, and I was like, hey, I recognize that airplane. But you've put together an air show act, kind of in the similar vein of CAF's Tora, which is a recreation of Pearl Harbor, but you're looking at the aircraft of the Pacific Fleet.
Yeah, it was called the Prowlers of the Pacific. And it was the SB-2C, our SBD, the Corsair, a Kate, and we basically recreate a battle in front of the crowd. And it's a great experience, live pyro, and you get to really see what the airplanes are capable of doing. And, of course, as the Corsair wins, as it should, at the end of it, the Corsair goes into a full acro routine.
Okay.
It's really neat to be able to see what the airplanes are meant to do doing it.
And that, of course, ties directly into the mission of the CAF, and that is education. And the best way that the Commemorative Air Force presents education is by flying the airplanes and telling the stories, not just of the battles and the engagements, but also about the people who were involved.
Absolutely. So it's funny because when people go to the CAF, They go here because they want to see the airplanes move and breathe. And that's how you make a lasting impact on people. You let those airplanes do what they're supposed to do. You let them move. You let them breathe. You let them belch fire. You know, that's what they do. And when children's come out, you see them, they click in their mind that they understand. In fact, we have a working ball turret at the Dixie Wing. And one of our members rebuilt the whole thing, got it so it works, and we built a whole A-frame for it. And we, you know, if you've ever seen a ball turret, it's really painful to get in. I mean, you're crouched up like this. It's a horrible thing. And we had, at an air show, we had it set up, roped off accordingly and whatnot. And an old gentleman walked up with his family and their grandsons. And he was a ball turret gunner. And so we put him back in his ball turret. And, you know, there's 40 people around. All of a sudden you see it click in the child's mind, you know, his child's mind and their grandfather's, you know, all the way down the generational gaps. And you get to see what, you know, what we do as a CAF, be able to restore it and make that bridge, make that connection. It's a really neat experience.
Excellent. Philip Eagle is with the CAF Dixie Wing in the Atlanta area. If folks want to come visit you, where can they find you?
We're in Peachtree City, Georgia, about 30 minutes right south of Atlanta.
All right. And your website?
DixieWing.org.
And your Facebook page?
DixieWing.org.
Okay. Just go through it all.
Exactly.
No, actually, if you just search Dixie Wing, you'll find them as well. One of the larger units in the commemorative Air Force and really upholding the mission of the organization. Philip, thanks for joining us this morning, and we'll look forward to seeing the P-63 in the air with the T-38 on Sunday.
My pleasure.
All right. This is From the Stand. You're listening to EAA Radio.
You're listening to the voice of EAA. EAA Radio. 96.5 FM, 1210 AM, and EAAradio.net. Support for EAA Radio comes from Aspen Avionics. Aspen's Evolution 2500 system gives you the largest glass in your class. This easy-to-use glass cockpit system offers advanced capabilities and safety features with 3 versatile displays. Aspen provides an upgrade path to new features and capabilities, protecting your investment for the long haul. Aspen Avionics, affordable, easy to install, and easy to own. On the AirVenture grounds in Exhibit Building B or at aspenavionics.com.
Attending EAA AirVenture Oshkosh is like having your own quick-build airplane ownership kit. With programs on building, owning, operating, and maintaining your aircraft, you'll learn everything you need to know to get the most out of your aircraft and aviation adventure. If you're just getting started building your airplane, there are workshops on welding, composites, wing rib construction, and sheet metal forming. And there are plenty of forums on how to design an aircraft panel, spray painting basics, determining the weight and balance, and more. Special programs offer advice for choosing the right home built for you. Maintenance programs offer advice on owner-performed maintenance and dealing with the special needs of an aging aircraft. If you're almost finished with your project, forums on registering a home built, preparing it for final inspection by the FAA, keeping maintenance records, and preparing for that first flight won't disappoint you. While you may be building it yourself, there's plenty of help here at EAA AirVenture Oshkosh.
This is Rowan Hamad, and you're listening to EAA Radio. 50% chance of rain and thunderstorms in the forecast. South-southwest winds of 10 knots with temperatures in the high 70s and muggy humidity over 70%. We'll keep you updated as we progress through the day. Thank you for listening to EAA Radio.
All day and every day, EAA AirVenture Oshkosh presents informative forums on aviation topics and are a must-see for the aviation enthusiast. Proceed north Tower to the Forum Tent area. Check your AirVenture program for times and locations. The following forums begin today at 11:30. For-flight power users. So you want to be a CFI. Buy that plane or walk away. Building a flying football field. Landing Loving and Pitts. Aviation Legal 101. F-35 flight test update. Latex paint. An affordable choice. Aranca's by Bill Pancake. Flying in and out of Oshkosh. And Rotax 2-stroke upkeep. And the following workshops begin at 11:30. Stratix ADS-B. Power of Lycoming, and Flying the Western Front 1917. AirVenture is the place to increase your aviation IQ, learn a new skill, or hear the best flying story ever told. For updated times and locations, go to airventure.org.
It's not yet air show time at AirVenture, but there's plenty of action at the announcer's stand on the flight line. So let's head back upstairs for more From the Stand.
Good morning. Welcome back. You're listening to From the Stand. I'm Steve Buss, and joining me right now is Erin Miller, who is the granddaughter of one of the original WASP, Women Air Force Service Pilots. Good morning, Erin.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little about the WASP in general and your grandmother specifically.
So the WASP, the Women Air Force Service Pilots, were the first women to fly airplanes for the United States military. They started the program in the 1940s because there was a shortage of men available for combat missions overseas. So in desperation, they let women pilots come down to Texas and train to become pilots for the U.S. military. And my grandmother was one of those. There were, in the end, 1,102 total out of 25,000 applicants.
It is amazing when you look back at the history of aviation in the 20s and 30s. It wasn't as taboo for women to learn how to fly as it became as we started approaching World War II. There were a lot of female aviators in the early days of aviation.
Yeah, I mean, there was Amelia Earhart, all these well-known, Bessie Coleman, all these well-known. It's not like it was weird for women to fly, right. But for women to fly in the military was a whole other ball of wax. Like, kind of taking over the men's roles. And I think women in the military in general was a little bit unusual, but women pilots were especially unusual.
And, of course, you're here today not only talking about your experiences and your grandmother, but also as part of Women Venture, as a day set aside to kind of salute and encourage women to become involved in aviation.
Absolutely. My grandmother was a big proponent of having the next generation not have to face the same obstacles she did, and she was very encouraging of women learning to fly, and she loved to see young girls learning to fly, and she was especially proud of women who became military pilots, and especially members of the Thunderbirds and the more elite pilots, breaking that glass ceiling.
Excellent. Do you have a sense of the types of airplanes that she flew?
So my grandmother flew all the planes that they trained in, so the T-6, BT-13, PT-17, PT-19. She was a co-pilot on the B-17. Of course, they trained in several other types of planes. There were women who flew the pursuit planes, women who flew the bigger planes. They flew several different planes. My grandmother specifically trained male pilots in the BT-13 in instrument training was her role after she graduated from training.
Through the years, did she share any of the more unusual stories or experiences she had training other pilots?
Well, there's one thing she used to tell me is I'd say, well, what was your job, Grandma, in World War II during this situation? And she said, well, I trained the male pilots, and so they'd have to sit in the back seat under the cover and learn how to fly just with their instruments. And my job was to make sure they didn't crash into Mount Charleston, because she was stationed in Las Vegas, so... That was her. She used to tell me all the time.
Okay. Now, with all the WASP, they trained at Sweetwater
yes.
in Texas, which, if you've ever been there, I mean, the folks are great in Sweetwater, but it's not necessarily the nicest place to be. That was a hard environment to be, and for most of the WASP, sometimes it was the first time they were away from home. And to be kind of thrown into this new role.
Yeah, my grandma absolutely loved being with all these women from all over the country, where there were women who were, from farm communities, women from big cities. My grandma was from Baltimore, so she was a city girl, but, there were women who had already trained with crop dusters, so they had a lot of experience. My grandmother was kind of a newer pilot, so she had her license, but she didn't have as many hours as some of the other women, so she felt a little bit inferior when she showed up. But they all went through the same training, learned the same planes, learned the same information from the military, the U.S. Army Air Corps at the time. So she caught up with everybody, and she really enjoyed it. And she used to say they have to check for rattlesnakes before they get in the plane. And it was dusty. But Jackie Cochran made sure they always brushed their hair and put on their lipstick before they got out of the plane, so they looked pretty.
That's amazing. And the program itself, very successful, up until the later days of the war, when a number of pilots, male pilots, started coming back from combat and could now ferry airplanes and things, and the program was pretty unceremoniously ended.
Yeah, I actually have the original letter from Jackie Cochran and the U.S. Army mailed to my grandmother, and it says, well, you wouldn't want to replace the men, would you? You wouldn't want to take their jobs. So thanks for your service. Have a nice day, basically, is what it says.
Right. And as the WASP story has come to light in the last 20 years or so, there were a number of WASP who were lost in training, and because they weren't officially military members, the families were actually responsible for having to bring their loved one back home. And I know sometimes the ladies at Sweetwater would take up a collection to try and help make that possible.
Yeah, actually 2 women in my grandmother's training class died in accidents during training, and my grandmother did say that they passed a hat around, because I remember she told me once that one of the ladies came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, and so they collected money in a hat and then used it to send her body home.
And for many, many years, the WASP were not recognized as true veterans. There were no veteran benefits. It was almost as if the military tried to erase their existence.
Yeah, they actually did try to erase his existence. My grandmother told me that they told her when she left the program to not talk about it and just basically go home and live her life. And so that's what most of them did. And their documents were classified for about 30 years, according to my grandmother. But in the 1970s, they went back to Congress when the service academies started admitting women and lobbied for retroactive veterans benefits, which they received in 1977.
And since that time, the story of the WASP has come out, similar to the Tuskegee Airmen. Again, a marginalized a group of pilots who performed extraordinary things under some very trying circumstances. And with the veterans benefits and the recognition, there was one piece of recognition that was still left off, and that's really where your personal journey gets in, and that is when your grandmother passed away, she wanted to be buried in Arlington Cemetery. And at the time they said no.
Yes, that's correct. So my grandmother wanted to be at Arlington. She had actually attended at least 9 WASP burials at Arlington. Most of them were buried with their husbands who had been in the military, so they were eligible as spouses. But my grandmother was not. My grandfather didn't serve in the military because he had he was a 4F. So my grandmother was in a unique situation in that she was the one that served, but my grandfather didn't. So she requested to be at Arlington National Cemetery. They denied our request, and we were really confused because the law from the 1970s said they were veterans, and so I always thought she was a veteran, but apparently not the right kind. So thanks to Congresswoman Martha McSally, who I know people at the Airshoe know because she's a 26-year Air Force veteran, flew the A-10, she introduced the legislation to amend the law from 1977 so that the WASP were recognized as eligible for interment at Arlington National Cemetery. So after all that happened, we lobbied Congress, all this stuff happened, the President signed the bill into law in May 2016. We reapplied at Arlington, and on September 7th, 2016, we had a funeral at Arlington National Cemetery. And I'm very grateful to the aviation community for helping make that happen. They were very supportive. And I give a shout out to the Warbird community who performed a flyover with T6s and P-51s at my grandmother's funeral. So that was really a special moment.
And it means something special for you. You have a permanent reminder of the fight that it was to get her to Arlington.
Yes, I do. I have a tattoo on my arm. Where's the camera?
Yep.
Oh, there it is. Of the bill number, HR 4336 from the 114th Congress.
There you go. Now you have continued your work with the WASP and also with the Commemorative Air Force with a new program, the education program that they're just starting up.
Yeah, so it's similar to the WASP. If anyone knows the Rise Above Red Tails program, it's going to be similar to that. So we have a T6, which Rob is going to talk about in a moment, which they just discovered actually flew at Avenger Field in the 1940s. And so that's part of the program, but it goes along with a movie that is aimed at youth and inspiring them using the principles of the WASP, aiming high, never giving up, using your smarts, trying to, kind of like the story of the WASP. So it's teaching the history of the WASP along with the characteristics of the WASP that help them to achieve those goals of overcoming gender discrimination and being the first woman to serve in the military. And so there's a movie that goes along with it. It'll travel nationwide. It teaches the history and how to overcome these things, how to achieve your goals, how to map out a life plan whether you want to be a pilot or whatever you want to do with your life, how to map out those steps, like you have a flight plan for life, the different goals you need to achieve your ultimate goal.
And how has your grandmother's legacy influenced you?
Well, I didn't realize how much she influenced me until she was gone, unfortunately, and then I had to fight for her right to be interned where she wanted to be at Arlington National Cemetery. But she always encouraged her grandkids like me to be independent, travel a lot, learn things, and I know she loved coming to air shows. So I'm starting to see why she loved coming to air shows so much. The community is really welcoming and supportive, and yeah, so I learned a lot from her, but it was all kind of indirect. It's not like she sat around teaching me stories. It was like watching the way she lived. It's reflected in my character.
Excellent. Aaron, we appreciate you taking some time to join us today. You're actually doing a presentation on the entire Arlington experience here at AirVenture. Is that correct?
Yes, Friday morning, 11:30 a.m. at Forum 4. I'll be doing a talk about the Arlington National Cemetery, and I'll talk more about my grandmother, the book I'm writing, and the history of the WASP a little bit.
All right. Erin Miller is the granddaughter of Elaine Harmon, one of the original WASP, and we appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. Hopefully the rain will hold off, and we'll get a good day of air show in today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And this is EAA Radio.
Hi, this is Harrison Ford. When I'm not trying to act like someone else, I'm listening to EAA Radio.
Thanks to Nautel for their support of EAA Radio. Nautel is a global leader in the manufacture, design, sales, and support of navigational radio beacons, differential GPS transmitters, and high-power radio frequency products for AM and FM broadcast. For more than 40 years, Nautel has been delivering radio frequency solutions to more than 8,000 customers in 177 countries. More information can be found at nautel.com.
Take flight with the Chief Instructor Pilot Paul Prydecker and radio host Stuck Mike at noon on Squawk 1200. The hosts have gathered a crew together to have in-depth conversations with government officials, vendors, and special guests from AirVenture. Squawk 1200, noon on EAA Radio.
Start your day with the morning pre-flight live at 6 a.m. with Tommy and Jim. You'll get the local news and weather updates you need to plan your day at AirVenture. Whether you're getting ready for your fly-in or on the road to Oshkosh, catch fun conversation with the morning pre-flight.
Good morning, Oshkosh. I'm Spencer Schott, bringing you this EAA Radio News Update. Today, AirVenture is celebrating women in aviation for the 10th year in a row. EAA officials say this is a chance for women to build camaraderie, open doors to mentorship, and encourage women of all ages to participate. The goal of Women Venture is to springboard and to motivate other women to get involved either for fun or as a career in aviation. Events are scheduled throughout the day, including the annual Women Venture group photo on Boeing Plaza at 11 o'clock. All this week, hundreds of home builds have flown out to Oshkosh for AirVenture. While these planes are fun for everyone to look at, they have caught the eye of NASA. Home builder and engineer Barnaby Weinfran tells us about the never-ending variation of home builds.
And it continues. I mean, as you walk around the grounds, you see people playing with, now with electrics of various sorts, all kinds of engines, a lot of interesting avionics stuff coming along now.
While NASA is looking into home builds here at EAA, the space agency is also showing off their own projects at the NASA tent. Research engineer Michael Vincent is working on integrating unmanned aircraft into commercial airspace. But his booth is only one example of the projects NASA has on display.
NASA booth as a whole is really trying to showcase all of the really cool work that we're doing that really touches everybody's lives, not just in aviation, but everybody as a whole, as an American citizen.
The NASA booth also features a paper airplane competition, a drone flight simulator, and education about next month's total solar eclipse. Reporting for EAA Radio News, I'm Spencer Schott.
Taking you back now to the high ground, the Airshow announcers stand at AirVenture, where Steve Buss brings you more from the stand.
Welcome back. Joining me right now is Rob Krieg, who is a T6 pilot, member of the Air Force. Good morning, Rob. I'm well. This, I understand, is not your first time to Oshkosh.
No, not at all. We've started coming here in 2000. We missed a couple being overseas, but been here almost every year.
Tell us a little bit about your background in aviation.
So I'm a retired Marine. I was a navigator in the Marine Corps. Have been in love with flying, I think, since before I was born. Got my pilot's license in 1996. We've owned a couple of airplanes in the meantime. Taught my wife to fly, which was good marriage therapy.
It can be either good or bad.
Yeah, it was good.
You must be a good instructor then.
I had a good student.
Excellent answer. I like that. And you have been a member of the warbird community for a number of years as well.
I've wanted to be a member a lot longer than I have been a member. Our last assignment in the Marine Corps was in Japan. We moved back about 5 years ago, got involved with the CAF, and that was the gateway into warbirds.
Were you in aviation in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I was a navigator in the Prowler.
Okay, navigator in the Prowler. And any great stories from the Prowler days?
Tons, but...
Okay, so the ones that you can actually share with us, I guess, would be, I should have phrased it that way.
Whenever someone asks me that, and I start telling stories, and my wife will say, "I never heard that one." So there's some catalyst there that makes me open up and tell stories that I don't think about.
Okay. Well, with the warbird community, having served with the Marine Corps and now flying warbirds, I know that you do fly a T6. Are there any other warbirds that you're qualified in?
So I've qualified in the L5 and the BT-13.
Okay.
That our local CAF unit has.
What's it like to fly a BT-13?
It's really great. So that was the first radial engine airplane I flew. It was bigger and heavier than just about anything I flew. I have some time in a King Air, but for some reason the BT just feels bigger. Yeah. You understand when you fly it why they called it the vibrator.
Right.
Really the whole experience with the radial engine is takes different techniques for engine management, and I always describe warbirds like that they're a time machine.
Right.
It's one thing to see them in a museum, but when you get in the airplane and the engine comes to life and it starts smoking and vibrating and noisy, and it's really something that's completely different, and it's very experiential.
In your training, your warbird transition training, did you start with the BT and then move to the T6?
I did.
So similar to what they did during World War II?
I skipped over the steerman.
Right.
But that was it, yeah. So I had about 60 hours in the BT before I started flying the T6. And that's about what guys had back in the day.
So for those wondering, and I know a lot of folks already know, BT stands for Basic
Trainers. So they started in the primary trainers. The most common one was a steerman, then they went to the basic trainer. So in the BT-13 was the one that everybody flew. Then they learned a little bit of instrument work, a little bit of formation work, a little bit of night work. And then they went into the advanced trainer, the AT-6, for guys that were going single engine. They went into that, and they would learn some tactics, more formation, more nighttime, more instrument time. It's a heavier, more complex airplane, more horsepower, fully constant speed propeller, retractable gear. So stepping up in complexity with each of those three airplanes, and then also stepping up in the skills that they were learning. And
by the time you were done with the AT, you could fly just about any of the single-engine fighters in the inventory at the time.
So that's what they say, and it's really still the same way we do it today. All the guys you see out here in Mustangs and Corsairs and everything have all learned how to do that in the T6. It's still the gateway into all of those things. So very much the way pilots were trained in World War II, we're still doing that today.
Any desire to move up the fighter chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So our CAF unit has a TBM Avenger, and that's really what led us to purchase the T6.
There we go. So you're out on the East Coast.
Correct. Capitol Wing, just outside Washington, D.C.
So you have a very unique T6.
We do.
Actually, should say had a very unique T6.
Yeah, that's more accurate. So every T6, of course, has a history. And as I said, each of these warbirds is like flying a time machine. So in 1949, the Air Force, the newly born Air Force, put in an order to North American to have some of the older model T6s updated to the current model, which was the G model. And so we knew from our serial number. So what happened? They changed the serial number when they did that. So we knew from our serial number it was one of the first 300 that had happened, and that first 300 came from early airplanes. My partner and I were up flying. One of my partners is a history major, so he was telling me about a book he bought called The Definitive History of the T6. And I said, well, I'll show you where our serial number is in that one when we get down. And so when we got down, he had a different serial number than what's on our registration. And so after asking around, he found that on a placard on the rollover post behind the pilot's head. And on that post, it had the original serial number when it had 2,600 hours on the airplane. We think that was from an overhaul. And so from that serial number, we were then able to start searching for it. And we found that this lady named Constance Turner had an accident with it in October of 1943 at Sweetwater, Texas, at Avenger Field. And she, after that accident, was released from the program. It appears to be. She did not graduate, right. And so it appears that she was released from that. So when you made that discovery of the incredible history of the airplane, what was kind of going through your mind? It was really something that for a while we had been trying to piece together its earlier serial number, which most G models can't do, and so that was a great discovery. And then the process of then learning all these different pieces of information, and so then our unit leader at the CAF there mentioned to me jokingly one day, someday you're going to have to sell this to the CAF, right? And we said, yeah. So last summer I brought the airplane here, right. Went to the formation clinic in Dubuque, flew in the air show here, and then my other task from my partner for the week was to get together with some of the WASP veterans who are here and take them flying in the airplane. And so Thursday afternoon I was able to meet Marty Weil, took her flying in the airplane, and so the whole experience of doing that, of course, there's the rush hour right after the air show, and so I didn't want to be caught by that. So her grandson brought her over while the snowbirds were flying last year, and so she and I sat in the airplane waiting for them to finish, and for about 15 minutes she just told me stories of her flying days, probably stories that her family has never heard, but just it was one of those moments I wish I had recorded, that a reunion of an airplane that was at the field and a pilot who possibly trained in it. And so then we took off after the show, went out over Lake Winnebago. Initially, she didn't want to fly the airplane, but then after we got up, she's like, okay, I'll take it. And she was so excited when we got back. Her son told me that that was her favorite airplane ride of the week, and she had flew some very impressive things that week. So then, as I was kind of on the way home, I was thinking that, the CAF can do a much better job with this airplane than we can. It wasn't painted in the right color. It wasn't. We didn't have the ability to make an education program out of it, and so we called a partners meeting and said, "What do you guys think about selling it to the CAF? Let's think about it for a while, and we'll come back." And we kind of looked at each other and said, "We don't need to think about it. We're already done." So we contacted the CAF. We gave them an option on the airplane, and then a few months ago they exercised that option. So. Right, and there was a Kickstarter campaign to help raise the money to get the airplane, and it is here on site. It absolutely is. It's over on Boeing Square. All right, Rob Krieg is the gentleman that we're talking to right now, has discovered the history of this WASP T6 that's now going to become kind of a focal point of the educational program, but also hopefully a focal point of the Women Venture picture that's coming up this morning at 11 o'clock. So UPS has their big 757 here as sort of a backdrop, and they've had a number of their female employees coming in for this event today, but hopefully tucked in there is going to be that pretty little T6 with a gorgeous new paint job. Absolutely. It's the Delta Tech donated a paint job to us, to the CAF, and so we went down Saturday, picked it up, brand spanking new paint job. Managed to get it here without scratching it.
Right.
So that's all good.
And a big shout out to the West Ramp or Boeing Plaza crew, the yellow shirts who moved the airplane several times. They got it into the display area with about 6 inches on one side of one wingtip and less than 2 inches on the other side, but they put it through there like the pros they are, and as you say, not a scratch on it. It looks good. We again, hopefully, we'll see with the weather today and everything. Hopefully, it'll be in the picture. Rob, you'll still be able to fly the airplane though every once in a while.
So the CF is going to base the airplane in Dallas. So I'm taking it home from the show, and then we're going to deliver it to Dallas here in a few weeks.
Good.
My partners and I are going to be sponsors of the airplane. So whether we continue to fly it in the future, I guess we'll see.
Okay. Any words of advice for, there's a lot of private pilots walking around out here, and they see the warbirds flying, and they think, there's no way I'll ever be able to do that.
Yeah, so I used to think the same thing. There was a CAF unit on our field while I was, it's actually the one I belong to now, but back on the days when I had a Grumman Yankee, and I kind of just thought it's more money, more time, more experience than I'll ever have.
Right.
And so I think the CAF is kind of the greatest unintentional secret in general aviation. It really doesn't take that much time, money, experience. Go find your local CAF unit, tell them you want to be a pilot, or just be involved. If you want to get your hands on the airplanes, if you want to help maintain them, if you want to help educate the crowd about it, there's all kinds of opportunities for people to join the CAF and get involved.
All right. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining us. Rob Krieg, who flew the WASP T6 in here to AirVenture. Will it fly in the show at all?
So not in the show. We're going to fly tomorrow morning with a couple of rides. Hopefully a WASP veteran will join me in the air tomorrow morning.
Excellent. Well, I hope it's as enjoyable an experience as you had last year.
I hope so, too.
All right. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Steve.
And that's going to wrap up our show for today. Tomorrow, we'll spotlight the 90th anniversary of Charles Lindbergh's transatlantic solo flight. We'll talk with Rick Siegfried, who is one of the pilots of EAA Spirit of St. Louis replica, and also talk with Lindbergh's grandson, Eric, about the Ortigue Prize, which his grandfather won in 1927, and the modern-day equivalent, which Eric is involved in. That's the X Prize. Plus, we'll also talk to an original Tuskegee Airman, Lieutenant Colonel Harry Stewart, who is here at Oshkosh this week, and he will talk about his career with the famed Red Tails. And that's our program for this morning. This is From the Stand. I'm Steve Buss. We'll talk